Hey everybody, this is Ian, one of the co-hosts of the Be a Builder podcast. We're really excited to share this podcast with you and provide you all kinds of different ways that you can build your life on the foundation of Jesus. Our goal here at the Be a Builder podcast is to provide you with the very best listener experience possible. And with that in mind, we did want to share with you that there were a little bit of audio difficulties in the recording of this first episode that we hope won't be the case moving forward, but we did want to give you a little bit of a heads up today that if you hear any pops or static or any of that kind of stuff, we're aware of it. We did our best to fix it and clean it up in post-production, and what we're left with is what we believe is an episode that will absolutely help you, challenge you, and help you grow in your walk in relationship with Jesus, and again, help you gain some principles for building your life on the foundation of Jesus. We hope you enjoy, that you'll subscribe, like, follow, share, all those things, and that you'll join us again next week for episode 2. With that being said, let's go. Hello and welcome to the Be a Builder podcast presented by Epicenter Church. My name is Ian O'Brien. I am the family life pastor at Epicenter. I'm joined today by Pastor Mark Knight, the lead pastor at Epicenter.
Hey, glad to be here today.
Yes, sir. And Pastor Johny Williams.
Hey, what's happening, y'all?
Our military life pastor.
J-Rock.
And this is episode 1 of the Be a Builder podcast here presented by Epicenter Church. And today we're going to be asking you a question. What are you building?
Yeah.
Pastor Mark, why don't you give us a little bit of background about why that's the question we're asking today in episode 1?
Well, for Epicenter Church, let me make this individual and then we'll make it corporate. For Epicenter Church, we're going to use Epicenter Church even though it's corporate, more than an individual concept, because our hope and plan for this podcast is that this stretches beyond just Epicenter Church and that you share it with your friends. So there's an individual component and then there's a corporate component. For us at Epicenter Church, the concept for 2022 is build. Be a builder. We are builders. I am a builder. You're a builder. We're all builders. We're all building something. The problem is so many times in life we build something without counting the cost, which Jesus talks about.
Yep.
Or 2, we build something and we really didn't have the right plan for what we were building. And therefore what we're building didn't turn out the way we had thought. Or we don't have a plan at all, and so we never build. We just kind of coast through life. We get in maintenance mode. And when you begin to maintain something, the maintenance of something causes that something to die. If you think about it, if you make a $1 million and you try to maintain that $1 million without trying to make that $1 million grow, what are you going to do? You're going to spend it, and pretty soon you're going to be left with less than $1 million. So in life, we are just like everything in life. It produces something. It grows, and we're supposed to grow. We're supposed to build something. As human beings, we have the responsibility to build each other up. Just take Christ out of the picture. We have a responsibility to build each other up, just as human beings, just as community, as culture. But you throw Christ into the mix, and now all of a sudden it's do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So what does that mean? That means I'm building others. The whole concept of the gospel is around building others up. We're all building something. We're all building something.
Whether you realize it or not.
Listen, you are either using the process to build something that is going to be good, or you're in the process of tearing something down because you refuse to be the builder who has a plan.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. You're going to build something good, or you're going to tear something down. The question is, are we evaluating ourselves? Right? If we don't evaluate ourselves or our lives, we won't even recognize what we're building.
That's right.
Like evaluating ourselves and being honest. And what is our metric or measure of evaluation?
Yeah. And and Johnny, you made me have this thought. It is so easy to get caught up in the monotony of life. just the hustle and bustle of life, the responsibility of life, mundane Monday, I call it, tragic Tuesday,
right.
weary Wednesday, the trials of Thursday, the fear of Friday, whatever Saturday. And so we just go through life, and it just seems like it's the same thing every day. And pretty soon you get in this rut. And you know what a rut is? One of my mentors told me a rut is a grave with both ends knocked out. Think about it, man. You're really not going. You're just going to stay in the same place. You're going to move about, but you're never really going to accomplish the things that you wanted to accomplish. And one of the reasons why that is because we get so wrapped up with just doing life that we forget the why.
Yeah,
we forget the why. Even in our faith, man, we forget why. We even in church, we make our faith about us. If you think about it, your prayer life is more about you and what you need from God. Your faith is about, your worship is more about what you need from God rather than who God is. It becomes about us. We tell people all the time, well, why did you get saved? I got saved because Jesus died for me and he forgave me of my sins. Well, that's why your faith is about you, because you think he died. Listen, he did die for you, but he died for you in hopes that you would live for him.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a difference.
Yeah. And then, as a Christ follower, the Bible, I think, is pretty clear about our responsibility to build the kingdom of heaven here on earth.
Yeah.
And if we're not paying attention to that question, what are you building? We're going to, like you said, go through some motions and check some boxes and say, oh, look, I've built something valuable. But if it's not built on this foundation of understanding what that kingdom of heaven looks like and what it means to really become more like Jesus, then what we've done is we've built on a facade of something that just isn't true, and we're going to end up feeling empty, and it's going to crumble.
Yeah. We can build something beautiful, but not valuable forever. We could build something beautiful. But it ain't valuable. I was just thinking about this, right? You saying this, right?
Yeah.
I could build something that everybody admires, but it don't got no value in eternity. And God doesn't even, it doesn't have value to God.
It's like, I don't want to cut you off, but when you said that, it reminds me of an ice sculpture. Now, I ain't trying to knock anybody who does that or who had one of those at their wedding or whatever, because they're cool.
But they're just melting away.
You put hours and hours of work.
You pay $3,000 for something that's going to be gone in an hour and a half.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
But how valuable is it?
Yeah.
For the long term. I mean, if it's in your wedding, it's worth whatever you paid for it for your wedding, I guess. But
long term, I mean, so I look at it and people will evaluate things differently, and if we are building, when we are building, we're always building. It's not if we're building. That's a condition. Like I choose to. No, we are always. You are.
You are. Whether you want to, whether you realize it or not. Yeah.
We need to recognize that. How do we measure a beautiful building, or who decides what it is, right? And what are we building on? You said the word foundation, right? We got a chief. We have. Jesus is the chief cornerstone. And we can build on other things. But it's not a good foundation. It's not a sure foundation. And so I hope that this podcast will not just help others within our church or our congregation, but will help other people, Christ followers, those who don't know Christ, to recognize or evaluate, what are you building?
Yeah.
And does it have value before the one who's going to evaluate it?
And Johnny, you cannot build something valuable without a plan that is valuable.
Yes.
In other words, once you get a plan, you that plan has to be valuable to you. It has to be, or else you'll end up going for a year and forget why you were going for that year. You'll forget that you're building something just because of the monotony of life. And so you've got to have a valuable plan. But that's difficult in our culture today because we're all instantaneous. You know, you think about this, Johnny. You just bought a house, just built a house. And Johnny, you had frustrations in the building process because in your mind you had a level of expectation that this was going to end at a certain date, and it didn't. Okay, it ended months and months later.
Yeah.
Well, what you had to do was put your faith in God, in His plan, and in His timing. Even though it wasn't working out the way you had thought it would, you had to still hold on to the fact that God's got a plan. And so many times we walk away from that plan because what we tend to do is we tend to give God our plan and ask Him to bless it rather than try to figure out what God's plan is.
Yeah.
And therefore we walk away from things because the timing seems to be too long. When the timing that God has is different than what our expectations were. And so we walk away from something that, or we don't do what we should be doing in that something because it just seems to be taking more from us or not giving us the instantaneous reward that we want. But we've got to understand, you think about this concept. God had a plan. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and He laid out the plan. And then we've got all of the books of the Bible that finish up that plan. And we see that there was a plan. You know, we tend to just want to get to the end result. But yet the journey to get there, you got to remember, is probably more important than the end result.
Yeah.
Because you won't be ready for that end result if you don't experience the journey the way you're supposed to experience the journey.
Yeah.
And building is important. The finished product, what's the definition of build? The definition of build is putting together materials and parts in order to construct something. Yeah. Well, you can't have the finished product without the plumber being there. You can't have the finished product without the electrician being there. You can't have the finished product without the landscaper being there. You can't have the finished product without the drywall guy being there, without the painter being there. All of these parts and materials come together to make the finished product. We try to skip all of that to get there, and you can't do that, man.
You can't do that.
Not to build something valuable.
You know, you was talking about the situation with my family, and just and it's man, I'm thankful for what God did, and I say this because it made me reflect. A few weeks ago, I told someone this, that I don't think that we would have my family and I would appreciate our house the way we do now, or ever, if we didn't go through what we had to.
The process.
Yes, you go through the process. So we were. God was preparing us to be in the gift, a blessing that He provided for us, right? And so He was building us as much as He was building, as we were waiting for the house to be built.
Come on.
He was building us, right? How would I appreciate such a blessing that God gave to my family? I really just opened up heaven so we could have this home. I don't think truly that I would appreciate it as I do today when I go in my house and I sit on the couch or do something with my wife. We sit down at our dinner table with our children. If I didn't go through those months of waiting and challenges, right? And I believe God was building me, right? And Peter talks about trials. James talks about trials. What they produce. Yeah. The production, right? We look at the product, and I recognize this, Pastor Mark, that all the things that produce, that come from us in the building process, right? That home that someone else built, it wasn't for the person who built it. Yeah. It was for me.
Right.
It was for me. It wasn't the things that God is building up in us. Yeah. It's not for you to just share. It's for me. It's just for me to hold on to. You said this individualistic perspective. Yeah. Go ahead, Pastor.
Nah, I was just going to say, you talking about how all of that, the trial and frustration, it built a good result of gratitude and appreciation. But the reason for that is because you were cognizant of what you were trying to build in your life. Yeah. If you were not intentional about the fact that I'm trying to build a life that reflects the love of Jesus, I'm trying to build a family that relies on Jesus for even in hard and difficult times, it would have still, that situation would have still built something in your life, but it wouldn't have built gratitude. It would have built anger. It would have built resentment. It would have built all these things, because you have to be intentional about what you're building. And so, I love what you're saying, Pastor Mark, that all the trials and situations of life, God wants to use his building blocks to get us to where. But if we're not paying attention to what we're building, and more importantly, who's building us,
Yes.
then we're going to end up with something.
Yeah.
We're going to have built something, but we're going to have built a wall in our heart of like I said, anger, resentment, frustration, hatred, whatever the situation is.
You won't end up accomplishing the dream that you had. And there were times, Johnny, hopefully I'm not sharing too much information, that you wanted to walk away from that. But your resolve to stick to it was based upon the finished product that you had been working towards.
Yeah.
And you also knew that God was building something in you. So if you think about that concept, you cannot be a builder, which is what this whole podcast is about, without allowing God to build something in you.
Amen.
He has to build something in you first before you can be the builder that he needs you to be. And just like Ian said, who's helping build you? That's a question.
Man, we did a message in Epic Students last year. I don't know if it resonated with the students, but just writing that message resonated immensely with me.
Yeah.
And it's this idea that everything in life is formative.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, like I said, it's that question of who's building you, right? And so, Johnny, with your situation, you were intentional through prayer and conversation and seeking wisdom that you were going to make sure that God was building you through that, whatever, because you were seeking what you were allowing to speak into your life was something that you felt was going to produce the right results. But anything we give our time to is trying to form us.
Yes.
It's trying to shape us into its own image, or whether that's social media, whether it's coworkers, whether it's whatever it is, whether it's the shows or news channels we watch on TV, anything that we take into our hearts and minds is going to try to shape and mold what we're building.
Yeah.
And so often we're not paying attention to the fact that we're building anything, and so we don't pay attention to who we're building with and who's building us. And then, like I said, down the road we end up having built something that's not a great reflection of the kingdom of God, because we were,
or at least not what God intended to do through your life.
Exactly, because we weren't intentional about who is building us. Who are we allowing to shape us? And that going back to that sermon, it was Romans chapter 12, 1 and 2. And in the New Living Translation, Paul writes there, do not conform to I don't remember exactly the word, but the way of the world, basically, but be transformed by God. And ultimately what he's saying is, guess what? You're going to be formed.
Yeah.
You're either going to be conformed to the world, let the world shape you and mold you and build you in their image, or you're going to be transformed by God by letting him renew your mind, by changing the way you think.
That's good.
So, again, asking that question, what are you building? A big part of that answer is who's building with you and whose blueprints, I guess,
I think
are you following?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I really think we should probably take the rest of our time in this podcast and answer two questions.
Okay.
One is who's helping you in life be a builder? And two, who are you helping in life to be a builder?
Yeah.
Because those are the two things that Christ was focused on when it came to his disciples.
It's part of life.
Yeah.
You're always being built, and you're all, whether you acknowledge it or not, you're always helping build others, because people are watching you and they're learning from your example. So
yeah. We can go back to John chapter 5 verses 1 through 9 or 10 or whatever that is, and it's the dude who's he's been crippled since birth, and he's placed at the pool of Bethesda, and somebody takes him there, and he sits there at this pool and he begs. He begs along with all of these other people and who are begging in that period of time, and in walks Jesus at the time of one of the festivals, and was meandering his way through the crowd of all of these people who were there, this broken group, this broken generation of people, help, and all the cries that go with it. And the Bible tells us, or John's gospel, which I love John's gospel because John's gospel is basically pointing us to the divinity of Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, really, he points us to who Jesus is right out of the gate. He says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and everything that was made by Him, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among. He tells us right out of the gate that Jesus was present in the very creation story, and then he tells us why he came to earth. Okay, and then very early in his gospel, he shows Jesus walking through this crowd of brokenness, and his eyes become fixed upon this one dude. And when his eyes become fixed on this one dude, he starts having a conversation with the guy. Do you want to be well? And the guy says something that is so tragic. He says, I do, but no one wants to help me. So in other words, there was obviously this old folklore, this legend around this pool that they're sitting outside of, that an angel would fly over it, and once the angel flew over, the water would begin to stir, and the first person into the pool would be healed. And so he's telling Jesus, he doesn't realize that Jehovah Rapha himself, the healing God, is standing in front of him, because he doesn't understand the context of this conversation at this moment. But he says, no one will help me. No one will help me get into the water. And when you really think about that, it should cause you to really evaluate, two things. One, who's helping you, and two, who are you helping? Because there is both a need and there is both a mandate in that question. The need is, this guy had a need, and he felt like no one would help him. But the mandate, the greater story that John is trying to give us in the gospel, is that we have a responsibility to be the help that others need.
Yeah.
So, first let's talk about just who's helping you, because that is paramount in your journey with Christ. That is paramount in life. Why? Because there are people who will help you, and there will people who will hurt you.
Yeah.
There are those that will help you by speaking life into you, come alongside you, and then there are those who will be negative and will speak death into you. Who is helping you? Because here's the bottom line. The people that are helping you, are you listening to them, or have you surrounded yourself with the right people? Are you listening to their willingness to speak into your life, their willingness to help you? Or are you putting a higher value on the naysayers who say you can't do that, you will never be? Because we're listening to someone.
Yes.
Right.
And listening is a major part of the building process.
Yeah.
Because what you listen to gets into your spirit.
Yeah.
And when it gets into your spirit, that whatever's in your spirit is what you build on.
Right.
So if what's in your spirit is negativity, you're going to build on negativity by being a negative person.
Yeah.
So who's building? That's important, because the product, as Johnny said a while ago, the finished product, our lives produce something.
Right.
Okay, so as Christ followers, if you think about this, an apple doesn't produce an orange. An apple seed produces another apple. Okay, so if you're building something, everything. So if you've got anger, like you mentioned, I think, Ian, if you've got anger, what is that anger going to produce in your life? It's going to produce more anger, and then eventually bitterness, and then eventually, all of the other things that come with that. Which obviously the Bible says is sin. If it's love, then your life is going to be surrounded with peace and harmony.
Absolutely.
Okay, but your life will produce something. So as a Christ follower, our lives should be producing a Christ likeness.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right.
So how do you do that and know at the same time, keeping in mind this dude, he tells Jesus, no one would help me. At this moment, he doesn't realize that Jesus is his help.
Yeah.
But no one will help me. So how do you make sure that you're doing the right things, that you've got the right people helping you, the right people speaking into your life? What can we do for that?
Well, I would first say that we definitely need to recognize, as Christ followers, that we can't do this in isolation, right? Most of the yous that we read in the New Testament are you-alls.
Yeah.
They're y'alls.
Yeah.
They're not you singular. They're you plural.
Yeah.
This thing is supposed to be done following Jesus in community. So first we need to recognize that I shouldn't be doing this alone, right? And then as you were saying this and talking about, where does our help come from and who is investing in us, I thought about Psalm 121 because I look where it says, I lift my eyes to the hills from whence comes my help. My help come from the Lord, right? Where am I looking for aid from, right? Where am I looking from, right? Am I looking to people who are reflections of Jesus to me? Or am I looking to the hills?
Right.
Because to a place, whether it's nature or natural things, or to the place where people would commit idolatry and do other things, right? We have to recognize where we're looking to for our help. And I recognize that we have to look to God first and those who reflect his image. Because you said it, and not just those who reflect his image, but those who are Christ followers, who are going to iron sharpens iron, show us one brother another. If the other piece of iron is dull, it's never going to make you sharp. And, and this is the thing, that when we look and when we recognize what produce, if I'm getting negativity in, if I let people, if I'm allowing those around me to speak negativity in, you know what's going to happen?
You're going to become more negative.
You're going to become negative, and you know what's going to come out? Every tree, if we look at an apple tree, an orange tree, or anything, right? They're going to produce fruit. Like, as we talk about, negative come out. But who is the fruit for? It's for those around the tree to partake of it.
That's right.
So what happens is we allow that negativity into our spirit, and we surround ourselves with some community,
right?
Or we just do it alone, and we allow, and we just feed in, whether it's social media or whatever. There's all these venues. I'm not going to call a specific one out. What happens is we allow that in, right?
Yeah.
And the produce is never for us.
Yeah.
The produce, when you pick the apple tree, don't produce partake of its own fruit.
Yeah.
The people around it. So now we put poison in others. So we put poison in and poison out, and then we poison those around us. You eat a bad apple, you get sick.
Yep.
Right.
So we're not building hope, man. We're building brokenness.
Right. When you're not paying attention to, again, what is building you, who is building with you. A way I love to ask it is, who's discipling you?
Yeah.
Right. Because if we spend an hour and a half in church on Sunday morning, but then we scroll through TikTok and Twitter for 5 hours and watch cable news for 15 hours. And then sit and listen to our coworkers complain for 35 hours
and wonder why the symptoms in our lives are what they are.
Who's actually discipling us?
Yes. It's so true. Going on what Johny said out of Psalms 121.
Yeah.
Think about this image for a minute. So the writer of that psalm is on the way to the temple. He's going up for one of the festivals, and he's on the way up to the temple, and he's climbing these arduous passes. And I can't remember what the elevation changes. I want to say it's like 3,000 feet over the course of several miles, and it's a day's worth of journey. And he asked the question, where does my help come from? That's how that psalm starts. Where does my help come from? In other words, he's walking the hills, Johny, and he's looking for help. He's looking for help. Like, he comes around the curve, and he's like hoping somebody's going to be there to help him. And on this journey, picture somebody saying to him, man, you might as well turn around. You're too old. You're out of shape. You can't do this. You can't do that. You'll never be this. Why even go, man? You're about to die to even try to get there. And he realizes that at every turn, he might have been looking for help from someone, but his help didn't come from that someone. His help didn't come out of the hills. So what does it say? He answers this question. He said, I look above the hills. From where does my help come? My help comes from the Lord. And so, and then, who's helping you? I think you got it, like Ian said, you got to surround yourself with people who are speaking into your life. If God gives you a vision, and in the next episode we're going to talk about vision.
Right.
But if God gives you a vision and you take it to somebody, and the first thing they say to you is, you're stupid, something's wrong with you. Do you remember when? You know who you are. This is the way I see you. That's probably not someone that's going to help you build what God's put in your heart.
Yeah.
There is a they that will help you, and there's a they that will hurt you. That they that you surround yourself with is very important. That's why that dude said to Jesus, I don't have anyone that will help me. But that second question, that follow-up question, is very, very important, because we shouldn't just be takers in life.
Right.
We should also be givers.
Right.
And Johnny, you referenced that. Who is the fruit for? The fruit in our lives is not from us. The fruit that we produce out of our lives is for those that are around us.
Yeah.
So who are you helping?
Right.
Because it is tragic to think that there are people around you that could use your help. You see, you got to understand that, one, you got to have the right people who are helping you. And two, you've got to make sure that you're helping others, because you've got to be committed to this thought. God is my help, but God also wants me to be someone's help.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's the whole premise of the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then really the answer to that question, we don't always even get to decide who are we helping.
Yeah.
Because the answer to that question is anybody who's around you, anybody who thinks enough of you to pay attention to your pattern, the patterns of your life. And
Yes.
And again, just on a real kind of basic level, going back to since that's where we started, the example of you building your house. If you and your wife hadn't been intentional about, we're going to allow God to build something positive in us through this situation. If you had sunken into that resentment and bitterness, you know who the first 3 or 4 people who are going to see that resentment and bitterness in your lives and then develop that pattern in their own lives?
Yeah, my children.
Yeah, the people who spend the most time with you.
Absolutely.
Right. And so again, whatever station you're at, maybe you don't have kids or even a spouse, but the people who are around you. And if we're going to wear this mantle of Christ follower, if we're going to call ourselves Christian and then allow ourselves to be discipled by someone who is living out this negativity or takes this woe is me approach to the world, we're called to be builders, which means we're called to, again, build the kingdom of heaven here on earth, which means we absolutely should live our life with our eyes on a city or a kingdom beyond the one we're in right now.
Absolutely.
Which means we always have reason to hope.
Yeah.
We always have reason, no matter what our earthly circumstances look like here. And when you live in a way that leads with hope and love, you won't even know who you're helping.
Yep.
Obviously, there's going to be these specific interactions where you're going to be able to speak life into people around you. But you won't always even know who's just watching you and being like, man, that person is just, I want to be like that person.
Yeah.
Because no matter what's going on, they always have a positive outlook. They're always, putting their trust that it's gonna be okay.
Yeah. Just really, if I were to, as we close this thing down today, just get the right people around you that are willing to help you. And when that happens, God is going to show you the people that he wants you to help.
Right.
I've got a mentor in my life. In fact, I got a telephone call this morning from a young pastor who wants me to help mentor him. I think being a mentor is important. Speaking into others' lives is very important. Why? Because we cannot just be takers. We have to be givers in the kingdom. But one of the mentors that I sit with that means a lot to me, he speaks into my life quite often. And when I sit with him, he's helping me. It's question one is, who's helping you? Okay, so he's helping me. He's pouring into me. But he understands the concept that we can't just be a person who is being helped all the time. We have to be a person who's helping others. So we always start out our conversation and he's helping me. He's just pouring into my life. He's pouring into my life. And we always finish the conversation with something that I can help him with.
Right.
Always. Why? Because it produces in us a way to not only just take something, but to remember that we're funnels that God uses to pour in and through us.
Amen.
He wants to fill us up. David writes this, and we'll close, and Ian, you can close us out. But David says, he causes my cup to overflow.
Right.
And the overflowing part of your cup is not going to do one bit of good for you personally. Why? Because you can't contain it. Mm-hmm. You know why it overflows? For everybody that's around you.
Yep.
So that what's in you is now spilling out on
Oh, man, that's the drip right there.
Yeah,
that's the drip.
That's it. J-Rod said that's the drip, man. I'm telling you.
And so I think we can probably summarize this whole conversation. The answer to the question, what are you building? The answer for everybody is something.
Mm-hmm.
You're building something, whether you think you are or not. Like, even if you think you're floating through life just apathetic, you're building something.
Yeah.
So what are you building? That answer for each of you, anybody listening today, and all three of us, is dependent on the answer to those other two questions. who's building with you or who's
Yeah.
helping you, and
Yeah.
who are you building for, or
Ooh.
who are you helping?
Hey, listen,
Right.
the next episode, Ian, let's talk about vision, man.
Yeah,
And
because
how vision is a part
I
of
think
what
that
we're talking
vision does, it really kind of flows out of when you understand the idea that you're building something.
about. Yeah.
And you understand that someone's helping you build and you're building for someone else, then that really crystallizes the importance of having a vision for yourself, for your family, for your community, for your future, for everything. So we'll close things out today on episode 1 of the Be a Builder podcast presented by Epicenter Church. Please do make sure that you like and subscribe and share this with everybody that you can. And then if you have any comments or questions, you can obviously leave those. If you're watching on YouTube, you can leave those in the comments. Or if you are listening, you can reach us at beabuilder@yourepicenter.com through email. We'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, comments, any of that kind of stuff. And tune in next week for episode 2. We'll see you then.
Go in
Be
peace and
blessed,
love.
man.
Go in peace and love. Yeah. Y'all know who Don Cornelius is?
Yeah. Yeah, you know I know Soul Train.
Peace and love.